Upgrade your game day with Team Toyota. Headed to the practice fields or the stadium? We have a great selection of new trucks and SUVs to choose from. And with our lineup of over 200 certified used Toyotas, you can find the right fit for you or for your budget. 75 used cars under $20K. Don't get stuck on the sidelines. Our service centers are here to get you back on the road in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Princeton, Langhorne, or Glen Mills, or online at teamtoyota.net. Hey everybody, thank you for checking out the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. I'm Corey Seidman, he is Spencer McKercher, and we are sitting here on Wednesday, January 15th, exactly 4 weeks before pitchers and catchers report to Clearwater for spring training. That'll be February 12th. The Phillies sent out their list of non-roster invitees to spring training on Tuesday, and a lot of the names were what you'd expect, like depth pieces at the minor league, at the upper levels of the minor leagues, but also some intriguing names. The Phillies' top 3 prospects: Andrew Painter, the starting pitcher; Aiden Miller, the shortstop; Justin Crawford, the center fielder. They will all be in big league camp. It'll be the first time for Miller and Crawford, the second go round for Painter, but that seemed to generate some excitement, huh, Spence? Getting the fan base talking about these top prospects we're eager to see.
It did, dude. And even just MLB announcing, pitchers and catchers report on the 12th and full squad workouts on the 17th of February. I can't believe we're already here, man. The offseason flew by. And yeah, these guys, some of these guys that they're fun names, man. Of course, like you said, you mentioned the big names, obviously, and that's exciting to begin with. Even just getting to see Andrew Painter again. We didn't really see him at all last season when we were down there in Clearwater. He was kind of doing his random workouts on the side and didn't really do anything more. So obviously he's the big one. Aiden Miller is going to be fun as well. And looking forward to hopefully getting to talk to some of these guys once we get down there to see, how their off seasons were and kind of see where their mind is. It was a busy off season for them. A lot of trade talks and all that. And obviously we'll probably get into Nick Castellanos' interview that he had over the weekend, or last week, I guess I should say, just talking about trade rumors and how he, kind of went to Dave. So yeah, man, it's exciting. I'm kind of looking at the list now. Even just, Rodolfo Castro's back in there, Otto Kemp, Gabriel Rincones, who is an exciting outfielder as well. So yeah, man, looking forward to, I just can't believe we're already talking about Clearwater here. It's coming up shortly.
Yeah, I mean, a bulk of the offseason went very slowly, but then it's like really from the time of the winter meetings until now, it feels like it's flown by these last 5 weeks. The 3 top prospects I mentioned, that Andrew Painter, it's going to be a different spring training for him than it was in 2023. When he was in that camp, all eyes were on him from day one because he was in a battle for the 5th starter's job at 19 years old. So you had this top prospect around baseball who had a chance to carve out a role for a contending team. And, everybody wanted to see his velocity. And I remember that there was that game at the Minnesota Twins in spring training where he was throwing 99, 100 miles per hour, Painter. Then he comes out of it with an elbow injury that eventually requires Tommy John surgery. Painter missed all of 2024, but then he dazzled in the Arizona Fall League a couple months ago, again hitting 99 with that fastball, more strikeouts than innings. He ended up taking home the top pitching award from the Arizona Fall League. So he looks like he's healthy, but the plan with Painter in this camp is he's not going to pitch in games. He's not going to pitch in Grapefruit League games. He will throw. We'll go through a throwing program. And then when the season starts, the Phillies will, gradually build him up in the minors. Dave Dombrowski's comment just before Christmas was that they wouldn't expect Painter to be able to contribute probably until July-ish at the big league level. So you're likely looking at the second half, but this is a guy who, even if he doesn't end up like starting for the Phillies in the second half, if he's healthy, we've seen over the years teams integrate young pitchers by having them, take down 2-3 innings of relief to kind of let them get their feet wet. So Painter could end up becoming a dangerous weapon for the Phillies in the second half, but it's a lot different than it was a couple years ago just because the rotation's filled out. They have the best 1 through 5 in baseball right now. So barring an injury, there isn't going to be really much opportunity for any of these starting pitchers.
Exactly. And yeah, you mentioned the rotation's filled. That trade to get Jesus Luzardo, you give up Starlin Caba, who is also, talked about down in camp last year a lot. I sat down with him last year down there, and a great kid. Wish Caba obviously all the best, but can you imagine, dude, if this comes down to like July-ish, right? And you see Andrew Painter, and like you said, it just kind of bolsters either a bullpen or just a six rotation guy. Then you still have Taijuan Walker, obviously still in the mix as well. But even Miller too, man. I guess this is his first big league camp. Only 20, and then you mentioned, I saw in your article that you mentioned that Justin Crawford, who recently just turned 21, is also there. So a lot of exciting stuff. Yeah, man. And if you can get Andrew Painter, if you can ramp him up, obviously he still hasn't thrown 100 innings yet, so that's still an issue, and they're gonna probably take their time with him. But if you can get Andrew Painter into this bullpen, into even possibly a start. I mean, last year we saw obviously there's more depth this year in the starting rotation, but you had Tyler Phillips come up and dazzle, in July and August. So it would be great to see Andrew Painter come up at some point. And looking forward to seeing what he's got down in Clearwater.
Yeah, and Justin Crawford and Aiden Miller, I mean, they're probably a little bit farther away. I wouldn't expect them to be helping at the big league level in 2025, but potentially 26. And the reason we're talking so much about these top prospects is because the Phillies, believe it or not, have spent more money this offseason in terms of the difference between their final payroll in 2024 to right now. The Phillies have spent more money than any team in baseball. And it probably doesn't seem like that because there haven't been like a ton of high profile additions. There's been Max Kepler, Jordan Romano, Jesus Luzardo. But the Phillies' final payroll last season was an estimated $265 million. Now it's up to $299 million in terms of, that's not even the luxury tax payroll. That's just like the strict payroll. So the Phillies have spent about $35 million more. And then contrarily, the Mets, who obviously made that big splash with Juan Soto, their payroll is actually about $80 million less than it was to end last season. So that kind of just goes to show you that you can't just look at the free agent moves, the size of a move, and that determines your offseason. The Phillies, it's also the fact that all of their players are more expensive. Zach Wheeler's salary almost doubles from last year because of the big extension. And then you have Bohm, Suarez, all your arbitration guys that got raises. So all this money that was accruing and becoming deeper, richer contracts, and you had nothing coming off the books. So that's why all of these prospects matter so much. If you're able to next year infuse Miller or Crawford into a veteran expensive lineup, that is huge. I think back to when the Phillies first called up Dominic Brown all those years ago, when he was one of the top offensive prospects in baseball. The thought then was wow, if you could get this guy, if this guy hits, right, and you surround him with all these veterans and you have this young guy who's learning from the veterans while also being inexpensive, that's how you build a sustainable contending team. And that's why these guys are so crucial to the Phillies' future. And it's why the Phillies have been hesitant to part with them in any trade talks. There was a report from The Athletic that last summer the Phillies were willing to part with Miller and Crawford in a trade for Garrett Crochet. But, now that the dust has settled here all these months later, the Phillies ended up with Jesus Luzardo in exchange for Starlin Caba. Caba's also an exciting prospect, but he's a single A guy, and didn't have, the same pedigree as the other three guys. So it would seem to me that if you weigh those two options, Luzardo for Caba or Crochet for Miller and Crawford, and have to worry about signing him to an extension, easy choice for me to go with Luzardo in that sense.
Yeah, and obviously we've talked about it before. Caba, he was position locked, right? There was not really a lot of opportunities for Starlin Caba to make an impact at shortstop coming up here. Obviously, Trey's still in the books. Then you have Miller as well. Caba was going to be position locked regardless. So yeah, man, when you look back at some of that stuff and some of those trade talks and all that, Dave kind of mentioned to us when we were down there in the winter meetings that they weren't comfortable. They see a future in these guys quicker than a lot of people think, which is exciting. And then going back to the payroll real quick, dude, I know you talked about it in that little emergency pod when they got Luzardo. Just the fact that, even with the payroll and everything that comes about it, the fact that you can stick with a guy who is, maybe coming into his prime at a young age and Jesus Luzardo, and you get to keep him for the discount that you get, right? When you look at some of these other starting pitcher contracts that were off the books already, yeah, man, it's a steal. So there is positives in that as well. And yeah, I mean, because he could maybe get $11 million in arbitration next year. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Luzardo was making about $6.5 million this year.
Right.
So he would end up costing $17.5 million over 2 years. He needs to stay healthy. That's the most important thing. But when he stayed healthy over the last handful of seasons, he's been a very good starting pitcher. So, I think Phillies fans should be excited about this rotation. The lineup, the lineup, it's interesting because we wouldn't have expected, I don't think, that they would only make one addition, that the one addition would be a left-handed bat. But when you start to look at like the left-handed lineup versus the right-handed lineup, like if you're facing a lefty or righty, against righties, Phillies are going to be really dangerous because you have Harper, Schwarber, you have now you add Kepler into that, who is a real power bat against righties. So they're going to be one of the most dangerous lineups against right-handed pitching. And then last season, the Phillies actually were like a top 5 offense in all of baseball against left-handed pitching, which the main reasons for that, I would say, are that Schwarber had a career year against lefties and that Harper did damage against lefties the way he usually does. Like he had like a 380 on base percentage with power. So you have, the righties like Turner and Castellanos who you expect to hit lefties, but then you had a career year from Schwarber. I don't know if that repeats. I don't think that that's the kind of thing that we can just assume that, okay, Kyle Schwarber made this adjustment and therefore every year for the rest of his career, he's going to hit 260 against lefties. Or so, I don't think we can just safely say that. But I do see potential holes and weaknesses against left-handed pitching if Brandon Marsh doesn't handle his own, especially if Max Kepler doesn't handle same-handed pitching, because the Phillies do want to give him an opportunity to play every day. We talked to Kepler over the weekend, and he kind of just said that he's never looked at himself as a guy who struggled against lefties, that he's never considered that to be like a big weakness in his game, and that for him it's just the more you see them, the better he is. I will say last 3 years he's hit about 250, which, most lefties would sign up to hit 250 against same-handed pitching. But
exactly.
The upgrades definitely have been more so to the starting staff, I would say, than anything else, just because Luzardo is such an impact piece when healthy. But you mentioned that Nick Castellanos thing a couple minutes ago in terms of trade rumors. I did see some of his comments. Like I saw what he said about Jose Iglesias should have been unanimous MVP, and that definitely ruffled some feathers. I do understand what he is going for.
It's typical Nick, right?
Yeah. But the other stuff he said, though, that was much more interesting, right? Didn't he make a comment about texting Dave Dombrowski?
Exactly. So, dude, he literally came out and said that in that during the winter meetings, when that rumor came out that it was going to be him, Castellanos, and Bohm for Tucker, he told the guy that was interviewing him that he texted Dave immediately and was like, "Is this true?" Dave responded and said, "No, it's not true." And the guy interviewing kind of responded and was like, I mean, that takes like a lot of, what's, like, do you have that relationship with Dave? And he's like, of course. He's like, Dave drafted me, back in 2018. And just the way that he came through and he has this relationship with Dave. And he's like, not a lot of people have that kind of relationship. And that's what I love about Nick. I mean, it's not surprising. Dude, the one quote, again, just typical Nick. He's like, I'd rather just be shot between the eyes than led off a bread trail off a cliff. And I was like, yep, that sounds right. But I mean, that's who Nick is, man. And I thought that was really interesting. Just, those rumors come out, especially during the winter meetings, right? There's rumors swirling every which way. And it came out that Bohm and Castellanos for Kyle Tucker, and Tucker ended up going to the Cubs, obviously. But just the fact that Nick Castellanos had, he felt good enough to text Dave Dombrowski and just be like, is this true? And Dave said no. So obviously, and it goes back to maybe they weren't shopping Bohm. That's a whole different story than this, but right. But the whole interview was pretty funny. We talked about Lettuce. He was like, Phillies had the best hair on the team or in the league, and he shaved his head, obviously.
A lot of people seem to think that. So he was on with Chris Rose. He was on the Chris Rose rotation. You can check that out on YouTube for the Castellanos interview. I was talking to my brother about this the other day. I don't know if you've ever seen Joe Mazzulla, the Celtics head coach, if you've ever seen his press conferences.
It's insane.
That to me is, if Nick Castellanos was a head coach of a team, that's how he would address the media. That's how he would talk, like speaking in riddles and circles and all that. But
talking about going to war.
So in terms of like whether these guys were on the block, not on the block, I don't. It's not a black and white situation to me. Like I think that Bohm was definitely gettable if the right offer materialized, and if the same thing could have gone for Castellanos. If a team was willing to take on money or give the Phillies something of substance, they could have moved him as well. I don't think that they were actively calling every team around the league saying like, "Hey, do you want this guy? Do you want this guy?" Maybe there was some of that early in the offseason, but when a player contacts a front office executive and asks them a question like that, I don't know if that means no, they were never dangling him on the market. That just might mean that specific rumor was false. And that specific rumor about Bohm and Castellanos potentially for Kyle Tucker, there was one person who reported that nationally. That person doesn't have like an A+ track record. So I don't know if that's true or not. That might have been, overheard and just repeated and overheard by somebody who's not like a credible source and repeated. So again, though, that never made any sense to me anyway, like Castellanos and Bohm for Tucker, because you'd be getting 1 year of Tucker, who's a great player, better than both of them. But, you're not trading 2 years of Alec Bohm and Castellanos for that.
No
It would create other holes within the roster. But yeah, it was interesting to see Castellanos rather address the trade rumors connected to his name most of the offseason. And I'm sure that we're going to be having those conversations with Alec Bohm here in about a month. Now, one other Philly who did change teams this offseason, Jeff Hoffman.
There he is.
Interesting that it's been coming up over the last week or so that two different teams failed him after he took physicals. The Orioles and the Braves both noticed a shoulder issue during their physical with Jeff Hoffman, and neither of them felt comfortable enough to move forward with the contract for him. Reportedly, the Braves, this is according to MLB.com, the Braves look like were willing to offer him 5 years and close to $50 million, and that might have been like the opportunity to start. And if it doesn't work out, then you close. That could have been why. Orioles ended up offering a similar amount to what the Blue Jays ended up signing Hoffman for. But I just found it interesting because Hoffman was he was healthy the 2 years he was at the Philly, but there was obviously a downturn in performance in the playoffs, and you just wonder if any of that was affecting him then.
We talked about that when some of those rumors came out about him failing the two physicals. It kind of made sense, right? Like he did. That's a great point. Like he fell off, especially in the playoffs and late down the season. His fastball wasn't there, his command wasn't there. He was missing spots. So maybe there is the shoulder problem that he was dealing with. Going back, maybe, I'm don't get me wrong, I'm very happy for Jeff. And I think he wanted to be here really bad. He loved this clubhouse. He became friends with everybody. He was really well liked in the clubhouse. And so it is a shame to see him go. And I know a lot of Phillies fans were really upset that he will be moving on. But yeah, man, the physical stuff was crazy. Yeah, the fact that the Braves offered him a 5-year deal, as you mentioned, and they said that, the first few years maybe start in the rotation and then move to the pen later in the years. Orioles, the same exact thing. And I know the rumors were swirling this offseason that he wanted to be a starter and he wanted to try to get into these sort of things. But yeah, so I'm happy for Jeff. Hopefully he has a really good opportunity in Toronto. It's a team that drafted him. He's back up there. But it basically, it kind of solidified that everybody's thoughts that, I don't think the Phillies wanted him to offer that much money. 11 years or $11 million a year.
11 years, $300 million for a reliever.
basically the same Trey Turner contract for Jeff Hoffman. No, but I'm happy for him, but I just don't know. Like, do you think the Phillies were willing to give him that money? And obviously, maybe they knew about the shoulder problems as well.
I think for them, it was a combination of just, knowing where their payroll was. They didn't want to commit the dollars and years to a reliever. Correct. If they could get a similar reliever at like less of a commitment, you end up with Jordan Romano, 1 year, $10 million. Yep. You flip a coin between the two of them, who might have the better year in 2025. Like, I don't think anybody would be strongly leaning Hoffman or strongly leaning Romano when you look at their track records. With Hoffman,
it comes out of health too, right? Like, Romano's got to stay healthy here, and
with Hoffman, as well liked as he was here, and as much as he fit in here, the reality is he turned 32 last week, and this is the one chance he had to get a big payday. He's not going to get a similar payday at age 36 unless he has an amazing next 3 years. But this was his one chance to make life-changing money for himself and for future generations of his family. So as comfortable as you feel in a city, that trumps everything else. And what I will point out is that, the physical, whatever the Braves and Orioles found in the physical, teams have different criteria. Like, some teams will fail a player over something they see, while majority of other teams wouldn't, Right. And the Orioles, it should be said, were still willing to offer him reportedly a 3-year deal even after he failed the physical, just not for as much money as they were initially offering. So, like, if you remember a couple of years ago when Carlos Correa went through that ordeal in the offseason with the Mets and the Twins, where he was being offered contracts and failing physicals, and they were being readjusted to lower amounts. Sometimes that's like a tactic teams use, but I think that in this case, they had reason to just want to veer off him, but the Orioles still did have interest in him after that. Phillies play the Blue Jays every year. They see them a lot in spring training. I'm sure we'll be seeing Jeff Hoffman over in Dunedin and Clearwater quite a bit. But yeah, man, as we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, just 4 weeks until pitchers and catchers report. A lot of times you have most of the squad get there before full squad workouts. And when we were talking to Max Kepler last week, and he mentioned he's going to get to Clearwater early just to try to settle into left field. It's a position he hasn't played since single A. And he's going to be the Phillies left fielder. He's interested in kind of just learning about the ways that the outfield plays. Like at Citizens Bank Park, you have that angular left center field wall. He said he's excited. He said he's excited to potentially rob a home run because he never got to do that in Minnesota.
That's what I wanted to bring up. I was like, all right, Max, I would love to see him try to rob a left field there. I would love to see him try to rob a home run. But yeah, obviously he said in right field in Minnesota, obviously that wall is gigantic. So he didn't have an opportunity. But that caught my eye because I was like, I don't know. That wall in left field is pretty high. And obviously they have the fence there going into the garden.
You have to time it perfectly. Yeah.
I'm down, man. I'm down.
I feel like we've seen that over the years, though. A guy like gets to the left field wall in time and just like kind of bides his time and then, has perfect leap at the right exact point and gets it. But he is a high quality outfielder. Max Kepler's graded out very highly throughout his career as a corner outfielder. And, the Phillies could certainly use the outfield defense boost if they're going to have Brandon Marsh in center field a lot, because, that is not the same quality center fielder as Johan Rojas, but Rojas also remains in this picture. I mean, we said at the end of the offseason or at the end of the season that it would have been difficult to see Rojas still in the Phillies' plans, but here as we sit, it's probably going to be on the opening day roster, probably going to be playing a key role. You never say never. There could be trades or whatever that happened before opening day, but it sure seems like Johan Rojas is going to be a part-time center fielder against the Phillies who enters a lot of games late as a defensive replacement and pinch runner. And he's been playing regularly this offseason between the Winter League and just getting all the work he's been getting in Clearwater where he stayed this winter. So, he's another guy that there's going to be a lot of eyes on in spring training. I think, the prospects, guys like Rojas, Kepler, Lazaro, the new guys, going to be a lot of attention on all of them.
Yeah, and shout out to Johan, dude. Rookie of the year and got a Gold Glove in that Winter League down in Dominican this year. He had like 2 or 3 home runs. He's looking good. Obviously, it's a lot different coming up here than down there, but it is just good to see him. I think, and that's getting to know Johan a little bit more. He just wants to play, and I think the more that he plays, the more comfortable that he gets. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does this season as a part-timer. Coming in last year, it was like, all right, who's your center fielder? Who's your left fielder? And now we know, Max will be in left and Marsh in center with Johan coming off the bench. So looking forward to that, man. But what do you think of Max, by the way? I thought it was interesting too. It kind of hits you when in terms of as a human being, these guys, they're human beings as well, not just baseball players. And Max kind of talked about in his press conference there that, or I guess Zoom availability, whatever you want to call it. This is he spent 10 years with the Twins, right? And he said he's kind of nervous. He kind of feels like it's like a first day of school, like when you transition to a new school and all that stuff. He said the only guy that he knows in the clubhouse is Joe Ross, who they recently just signed as well. So he's a new guy. But it felt like just the way that he talked and the way he was like presenting himself, it seems like he's going to fit in with the clubhouse quite well. But it's just funny to hear like that human being aspect of, he's nervous and just kind of, getting to know the guys. It's going to be a whole brand new thing for him. When you spend 10 years, when you come over from Germany, you came over from a whole different country, your whole life, you've been basically your adult life, you've known Minnesota. Now you kind of make this transition to Philadelphia. And of course, just like everybody that's new here, Romano spoke of it. Jesus Luzardo spoke of it. And Max brought it up. Just seeing the crowd and seeing Red October and being here. He said he loved playing here. And the story of him telling, I guess he was getting his surgery here in Philadelphia and telling the story of he could see the bank in the playoff game from his hotel room, and he wanted to get down here, but he said he had to be wheelchaired around, so he didn't feel like doing that. But yeah, man, it's a whole, when you sit back and look at it as like a human being aspect, it's pretty cool that these guys are just like us, man. They're nervous and for a new job, right?
Yeah, I mean, Max Kepler really strikes me as a cerebral and thoughtful guy, and something that I've noticed over the years, like because I had heard that about him over the years, but I watch a ton of out-of-market baseball every single day. I'm watching like 9 games a day because I'm a loser during the summer. But Max Kepler, something that's always struck me about him when he's at the plate is that he has like the most intense laser focus on the pitcher that I've like ever seen. I mean, they say keep your eye on the ball, but all that. But his stare, it's like he's staring through the pitcher into center field. Like his eyes and his head are so still. And I mean, it makes sense that he's this like really cerebral, like thoughtful guy. But no, I was impressed by his, opening comments. And I do think that he'll fit in well. I mean, everybody fits in well to this clubhouse, whether they're a career minor leaguer, a young prospect, a big free agent coming over from somewhere else. But Curious to see how all that, works out early in camp. And I'm sure that the Phillies will be welcoming their new guys with open arms, those 4 additions we mentioned in Lazario, Kepler, Romano, and Joe Ross.
Real quick, if we're going to wrap up here.
Yeah. What's up?
Yeah. You've seen Barista Bryce?
I have. Yeah, I haven't. Yes, I have.
Thoughts?
I mean, it's long off season, man. You gotta branch out. Maybe this is like a post-playing career venture for him. I'm sure.
It's so funny, man. For anyone that doesn't know, Bryce Harper is basically an influencer now on TikTok, which, it could be banned here shortly.
Yeah, didn't TikTok get banned? I was about to say. Yeah.
So, dude, there's an announcement. We sit down here Wednesday. It's 11:30. I think there's like the Congress is making an announcement or whatever. I don't know how government works, but
I think that's how it works. Congress meets every day at 11 a.m. to discuss TikTok. I think that's how it works.
And they have this press conference, and it's just like they bring out all, everybody out.
So we just wanted to warm you all up for that. But yeah, that was Bryce is definitely enjoying himself. It's good to see.
I need to make coffee with dude. My goal when we get down there is to find Bryce and be like, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make some content. I need your coffee ingredients and whatever else. So
that might be the secret.
Fun stuff.
I'll let you figure out that avenue, Spence, and hope you enjoyed this Phillies Talk podcast. We'll be talking a lot before spring training gets underway. Thanks, everybody.